Welcome to the lead seat. Today, we'll be diving into one of the most pivotal and emotional and strategic moments in a leader's journey. And that's what happens when you are let go and how you find your way to what's next for you. My guest today is Brian Hinchcliffe, a career management consultant who has helped hundreds of executives navigate this crossroads. So, welcome, Brian, to the
Thank
show.
you, Marilyn. Yeah,
So, Brian, first I'd like to, start with the basics and talk a little bit about the role of a career consultant. So, what does a career consultant actually do when working with an executive that's just been let go?
yeah, that's a great question, and it's one that I usually broach with in first meetings with the clients that I have, because it's a bit of a mystery to people. I
Mm,
think there's often a perception that we're recruiters or that we somehow are in league with recruiters, and really our role is to help the executive to take stock of where they are in their life and their career journey, and and I try to understand, and I say this to them. I try to understand where you're coming from, where you're going to, and how to get there, and we help them along the way. Now, often a big part of that is getting their marketing collateral in good shape.
mhm,
That's things like their resume and their LinkedIn profile, their LinkedIn strategy. You know, there are a billion LinkedIn profiles available now.
mhm,
So you got to stand out for good reason on LinkedIn if you're going to be there, and you've got to be there. 100% of recruiters are using LinkedIn.
mhm,
So then we may do some assessment work using some of the formal assessments, or really just taking stock of what they liked about what they did previously, what they didn't like. It's important to understand why they were let go and how to describe that. But then to think about, well, okay, now I'm in the process. What are the tools I can use to get myself a new job or to launch into a new business, start a business, buy a franchise, consult? Many options. Uh, Maybe I'm looking to retire or thinking I will be at some stage, and I've got to work through that. Uh, and then for some people, they're looking at joining boards of directors.
mhm,
Some people even are looking at all four of those areas.
mhm.
They want to do a bit of everything, a portfolio career, if
No.
you will.
Uh-huh.
So that's a snapshot of what I would go through.
Okay. It's interesting. You and I both know when it comes to a career transition that there is somewhat of a grieving process because anytime we lose something, including our job, that there's a little bit of a grieving process. So,
So,
how do you help leaders shift from the shock or the shame to strategy?
yeah, that too is a great question. I think for many leaders, particularly if no, let's say particularly if they're male, they don't want to admit to being in any way vulnerable, particularly if
Mhm.
they've been executives. I'm a leader. I don't. Real men don't cry. That sort of.
Okay.
But um, and so it so much depends on how they've come to be displaced.
Okay.
They were just called into the CEO's office the day before out of the blue and told they're going with no explanation, which often happens.
Hmm.
If they've been there also a long time, that's a big factor. Um, that that can make for a real shock reaction compared to the guy who or the gal who thought, well, this isn't going as well. I got a new CEO a year or two ago. never quite seen eye to eye with them,
Hmm.
don't like the strategy they're following. I want to get out. And so sometimes they will initiate the departure themselves. And so that can make for quite a different emotional reaction. Uh,
Hmm.
so I basically we're not therapists. So
Right.
I've even had an executive who at the first meeting said, "I've engaged a therapist," and I said, "Well, that's good because
Hmm.
I'm not a therapist.
Hmm.
Well, I'll help them to work through that to the extent they need to, because if they can't get over what has been done to them by a third party, they're not in a position to go forward on their own terms
Hmm.
to rebuild their life and their career.
Hmm.
So it is important to get over that,
Hmm.
but generally we don't get into long, lengthy discussions around that because
Hmm.
our focus is more on rebuilding the career path.
Right. The future. We're on the future. So
Yeah.
I'm interested. What when you say that, and you're right, you're not a therapist, but you're there to help them move on. So what are some ways that how do you guide them through that when you run into that person that, I can't believe this happened to me, or grown men don't cry. It's how do you guide them to say, okay, I'm going to help you, you're here, but I want to help you move on. How do you guide them through that? What are some strategies or tactics you use?
Yeah, I think the one of the best ways is to get them to articulate, and I
Hmm.
mean write down or type up why the reason for leaving.
Okay.
We call it the exit statement, the public exit statement. Inevitably, somebody's going to ask them. It could be a family member,
Hmm.
it could be a recruiter, it could be just a networking contact who's going to ask, "So are you still at XYZ Corp?"
Hmm.
And if they're not, well, so why not? What happened?
Hmm.
And we know from sort of many examples that if somebody hasn't thought that through and got their story straight, they're going to ramble on for 20 minutes without really getting to the point. And more importantly, they're likely to open Pandora's box and have the person they're talking to start to wonder about whether there was something about their performance or their personality or their inability to get on with the boss that got
Hmm.
them fired. So having a very clear cut exit statement, and that's why writing it down or typing it up is essential to
Hmm.
get your thoughts straight. Three questions. First question, what was the stated reason why that the organization, the business reason they let you go?
Hmm.
And keeping that really simple. The whole statement, which most of the time you're going to deliver orally, face to face, or on the phone, or on a video call, that's got to be about 30 seconds total. So you don't want to go on too long. A simple statement about what happened from a business standpoint. Second question, okay, so what did I contribute? What did I deliver while I was at the company? What am I proud of having
Hmm.
done there? That starts to move the question from a potential negative, you've been fired, to a more positive statement that, okay, um, I did some good stuff while I was there.
Hmm.
And then the third question is, and this gets them into the forward looking mode, is what am I going to do next?
Hmm.
What are my ideas?
Hmm.
Even if they're not very well formed at this stage, they need to be able to give some idea of
Hmm.
basic direction they're considering.
Gotcha.
So that's how I would tend to work through it. If they can get that straight, that often unleashes any of that hidden emotional stuff about why they were let go.
Hmm.
Um, hopefully as a coach, they can trust me to, and I always make a point that it's confidential, that it's between the two of us. I'm not going to pass that back to the company.
Right.
Uh, if they can trust us, they will tell us things that are sometimes personal, certainly sometimes self-revelatory,
Hmm.
and but that way, then I can help them to tailor their message to the audience that they're likely to get, and keep
Okay.
it really short and concise. I call it a look them in the eye, um, factual, truthful,
Hmm.
but statement that avoids opening Pandora's box.
That's right. Opening. Yeah. Yeah. How important, Brian, is it for an executive to reframe their identity after a major leadership role ends?
Uh, yeah, that's one way of putting it. I think what I would say is it's an opportunity for them, and many of us get this opportunity through if our career's long enough,
Hmm.
we're going to have the opportunity to reframe
Hmm.
because we're going to get let go at some point. It's happened to me several times, and
Yeah, me as well.
it
Yeah.
might have happened to you. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's a chance to rethink the direction they're going. Now, if they've been doing what they're doing and building a career path over, say, 20 years, um, unless they're a glutton for punishment, they probably are doing that because they enjoy it, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But sometimes they'll realize, yeah, there were things I enjoyed, there were things I did not enjoy. So it's a real chance, it's a real opportunity to rethink, what do I not want to do? What do I want to do? Uh,
Hmm.
Take a more positive step forward. It may be a once in a lifetime opportunity to do
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
So it's always disappointing when people think they don't need to do that and they just
Right.
don't get into that, which happens. That's human nature.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay.
But ones that do can um, really make a great leap forward.
Okay. All right. Um, so that's sort of like the story that you're going to put together to explain. I always, when talking with my clients, I like to tell them, it's not about you, it's about the company. It was a business decision
Right,
kind of thing, but you don't want to someone you're talking to in any type of situation, interview, recruiter, or network, and you don't want, to put the blame on yourself because it basically was a
right.
business decision. But
Yes.
what's the biggest mistake you see executives make when they talk about their transition? What's one of the biggest mistakes they make?
I think one of the biggest mistakes is giving too much information. The more information, and I don't mean to be evasive, that
Hmm.
they shouldn't, I'm not encouraging them to be evasive, but the more information they give, the more likelihood they're going to badmouth the company, which is
Hmm.
never a good thing. Many of the separation agreements have a non-disparagement
Hmm.
clause, which they need to take seriously. And even if they don't have that clause, they need to think in those terms. There's nothing to be gained by publicly disparaging the company, even if they were the worst in the world.
Hmm.
But so um, I think it's just saying too much, and not being clear enough about. For example, I would start with, if they know what the company is saying publicly, maybe
Hmm.
they've released a statement saying that the VP of such and such has left to pursue their career goals. Um, Maybe there's something in that statement. They should latch onto that statement and not go beyond that and talk about, well, I really didn't get on with the CEO, and We were at loggerheads for 6 months,
Hmm. Hmm.
which could well be true, but it doesn't. It's good for them to acknowledge that personally. It's not good for them to be talking about that publicly.
I remember, Brian, you last time we talked, you had told me a story about how you kind of got into this work. It was something that you mentioned to me about someone came to you and you kind of put it together, put a program together. Do you remember us talking about that?
Um, well, the how I did get into it is that I was laid off myself.
Okay. Okay.
And the interesting thing was I was provided an outplacement program.
Uh-huh.
This was actually back in Australia, long time ago. And I really enjoyed the process. I didn't enjoy the fact that I'd been laid
Hmm.
off,
Hmm.
but I enjoyed the process. And
Hmm.
the consultant I had uh, did a great job of sort of drawing things out.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think I was a very good client because I know I didn't do all the things he'd encouraged me to do.
Hmm.
So I can identify with the clients I've got now who don't necessarily do all the things I suggest they do. But it just I got a taste for how effective he was in helping me to to rethink where I was going. I'd come
Hmm.
out of a sort of VP of HR role that I really didn't do a great job at the
Hmm.
time. And I was able to come to terms with that. And I decided as a result to go into consulting. And
Okay.
that took me into some very interesting places,
Hmm. Hmm.
literally interesting places in different parts of the world. Uh,
Mm.
and,
Nice.
and ultimately brought me to the US.
Great. Great. Yeah.
I
I
don't know if that's a story you're remembering, but
No, well, that's okay. That's not the one I remember, but that's okay. But I remember you said that someone had kind of asked you to set up a program or put together something.
oh, oh
And
yeah,
yeah,
yes.
that was the
Okay.
story I was
Well, that
thinking of.
was later on. I mean, I started off with, most of the consulting I did in career transition. I worked with early career to mid-career people. I didn't really gravitate towards working with executives. And so I was, one of the jobs I had, it was in Houston, and it was a small firm, and I was um, working away at career transition, working with my clients and so
Mhm.
forth. And the head of the firm, I came out of my office one day and the head of the firm was standing there in the open area talking to a client. And as I walked up, he introduced me to the client as the guy in charge of executive outplacement.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking to myself, oh, really? Because he'd never talked about that with me at all.
Mhm.
But I decided, well, you can go one of two ways. You can say, well, no, that's not me. But I decided to sort of go with it. And I, 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 I got into the role. I enjoyed it. I established some programs. For example, we had this is pre-pandemic, a very effective monthly executive networking group in a really nice location with finger food and drinks and
Mhm.
speaker. That was really helpful because it was in Houston at a time when the oil and gas industry was going through one of its um, regular downturns, and there were lots of executives coming out. And
Mhm.
I realized in working with them that executives are just normal people like the rest of us,
Yeah.
and they have their own. Uh, they're more interesting to work with often because they get to touch much more complex and interesting array of issues in the company.
Uh-huh.
So I really got to enjoy that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Mhm.
it's that the story.
Okay, right. That's the one I was thinking of. Okay, thanks. And I wanted to say, just like you, I had come out of corporate. It was due to a riff, a big one.
Hmm.
And I went with an outplacement service. I had outplacement services,
Yep.
which was fine. But then about 5 years after that, I ran into someone at a networking event, and it sort of was full circle for me. So I met someone at a networking event, and then it kind of took off from there. And then I came back into career transition consulting based on that because I had kind of been through the program. So it was like I sometimes like to tell people I'm a product of the product because
Yeah.
once you've had that experience, you understand not only the process or what needs to be done, but you can also understand the emotional, piece of it. You
Yeah.
can, and so I think that was kind of my how I got into career transition. And I always like you had said, a couple of people landed for you this past week.
Yeah.
That's always like ring the bell. You really love to see that
Yes,
when clients
absolutely.
find their way
Yeah.
and get land where they at another opportunity that is really going to work for them. So that's
Yeah.
always the gratification of doing this kind of work.
Yeah.
So, but let's talk a little bit then, since we talk about wanting people to, find their new home, some job strategies. So, what's different about job searching at an executive level after you've maybe been riffed, I should say? Is there anything different?
Well, I think uh, the thing about executives is they generally realize, unlike people maybe at lower levels in the organization,
Mhm.
they generally realize that they've got to uh, get their network involved in the process.
Okay.
That camping out on LinkedIn jobs and firing off 20 applications a day with nothing else, without networking, is
Hmm.
not going to get them far
Hmm.
quickly. Maybe eventually they'll get a job, but it's not a recipe for getting something quickly. And it's not necessarily a recipe for getting the right job.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's one thing to land a job, but you want to get a job that you want to be doing, not something that takes you back to something you didn't really enjoy when you did it 5 years ago. So why do it again?
Yes.
Yeah. So that would be the one key thing is that I think networking is important for everybody. It's essential for executives to be networking in whatever way makes sense for them. I often say to people that they need to find a way to network that fits their lifestyle, fits their personality, fits their family situation,
Hmm.
um, that is comfortable for them. If networking is uncomfortable for you, it may be that you're not doing it the right way.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay.
Um,
So tell me a little bit about what would be the right way. Because as you say that, if networking is uncomfortable, I had someone just the other week that I had suggested they start doing some more networking and they are very uncomfortable doing it.
yeah.
And so, what would you suggest for someone that's uncomfortable doing networking? How can they kind of engage or re-engage their network?
Hmm. I think what I try to do is to dig into the why it's uncomfortable for them.
Mm, okay.
What are they what is it they're doing that they're calling networking? Because there's
Ah,
so many different ways that you can network. You know, at, at the worst case, I've seen people that are not necessarily executives, but they're sort of desperate to get a job. They've got financial constraints.
mm-hmm,
They need to get something quickly. So their idea of networking is reaching out to everybody I'm connected with on LinkedIn, everybody I know in my phone contacts, and basically asking them, have you got a job for me? And of course, there are two possible answers, and the most likely is no.
right.
Right. What I try to get people to think about is having a conversation with people.
Hmm.
Um, and another factor is that I think the majority of people that I work with are probably um, find it can be uncomfortable. They may be more reserved,
Hmm.
and my I will say to people, well, I think that a more introverted or more reserved person actually can be really very effective in networking because they don't need to be doing all the talking.
Hmm.
They're quite happy. I mean, if they can get themselves to talk to the person in the first place, that's the big hurdle. If they can meet them in the coffee shop or make the phone call that they've set up or the Zoom call and have a conversation, really all they've got to do to get things going is to introduce themselves and ask the other person what's going on with you,
Hmm.
starting with that from that point of view.
Hmm.
And then the thing that a quieter person will do is they will ask the question and keep quiet and listen to the
Hmm.
answer. If
Hmm.
you're the extreme extrovert, you want to keep talking and you don't hear anything,
Hmm.
don't learn anything. There's a saying you don't uh, learn anything new by listening to yourself talk.
Hmm.
So so that's an example. Uh, there are lots of little nuances of using LinkedIn to find people and just adapting um, your messaging.
Hmm.
Uh, for example, if we take LinkedIn for an example, and I hope this is not too detailed, but
No.
I think often people have the wrong idea about LinkedIn messages. To
Mm.
me, the LinkedIn window for messaging is really a little square, right?
Hmm.
If I've got to scroll 6 times through your message to get to the bottom, and you're asking me 6 different things in that message, I won't get to the bottom, and I
Hmm.
won't answer your question. I'll ignore it.
Hmm.
LinkedIn is set up for very short messages that really have um, two parts to them, maybe 2 sentences or fragments. Uh, the the first one is the reason that you're connecting with them. Oh, I see we went to the same college.
Hmm.
See, we both got MBAs from wherever. That first, some point of commonality that you've got with the person is the first thing. And then a simple question following that is the second thing. That simple question might be, um, will you connect with me?
Hmm.
That simple question might be, could we meet for 10 minutes at Starbucks on Tuesday? Something that can be answered easily that doesn't require, you know, hours of research. Because people won't do it on a LinkedIn
Hmm.
message.
Because
Yeah.
I know networking comes in a lot of different forms. You know, online networking,
Yep.
face-to-face networking. During pandemic, that was all we could do was online. You know, and it was good
Yep.
to start seeing after pandemic people start network socializing more.
Yes. Yes.
I was real happy to see that come back where people started
Mhm.
coming back
Mhm.
outside and actually interacting face to face as
Yep.
opposed to, having to do it through a computer. So I
Yeah.
know there's a lot of different ways to network. I always think about networking as giving. So, you give information and you'll get information. And I'm always about helping
Yes.
someone with something and hopefully they remember me because of, or they do remember me to say, Marilyn helped me, was going through something or I had a question about looking
Mhm.
for a position and she was real open about giving me some suggestions and so forth. And,
Yes.
people will tell others about that experience if
Yeah.
it's in a positive experience. So it's about gathering information, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It is not
Mhm.
about, do you have a job? Because most people
Yeah.
don't have a job.
Right.
don't have a job. It's about giving. I
Yeah.
think it's about giving.
And I think to that point,
Hmm.
what I encourage people to do is to ask open-ended questions.
Hmm.
We have a little acronym at Keystone, which is AIR,
Hmm.
uh, asking questions, asking for that person for some advice
Hmm.
about your
Right.
search. Now,
Right.
that advice could be advice you don't want to hear or you're going to ignore, but it's nice to get the advice. People
Hmm.
want to help,
Hmm.
but they may give you a piece of advice that you haven't thought of before that can be helpful.
Right.
But it's an open-ended question. You can't answer that yes and no. The second, the I is information. What you're after from that person is perspective about what's happening in the location,
Hmm.
where they live, the industry they're in, the company they're in, the economy generally. They may have a perspective on that that can be helpful. And the R is for referrals or recommendations.
Hmm.
Who can they introduce me to? There's going to be somebody I don't know that I need to know.
Hmm. Right.
And so who can they introduce me to that I should benefit from?